Welcome, everybody, to One Stage at a Time, the podcast where we play through video games one stage at a time, playing through every single level, not skipping a single level. No flutes, no magic warp pipes, no nothing. This time, we are starting a brand new game, Sonic the Hedgehog, for the, drumroll please, Sega Game Gear.
What?
I didn't expect you to actually do it. The Sega Game Gear, you heard me right, and that is my co-host, Andy Prim.
Wait a minute. I thought we were playing Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Genesis.
Negative! Absolutely not. I forbid it. We are playing Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Game Gear.
Oh, no.
You know that
please.
game it was carried in everyone's pocket. Everyone had it on them at all times because the Sega Game Gear let you take your game on the go.
You'd have a fanny pack, and in your fanny pack would be a Sega Game Gear.
You put it in your fanny pack, and you took it to the mall, and KB Toys was there, and you buy your Game Gear games. We are joined once again by an illustrious guest, one Jared Vandergriff. Hello, Jared. Thank you for being here on this. This is a landmark episode, really.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So that's right, folks. We are indeed playing 8-bit Sonic the Hedgehog, also known as Sonic the Hedgehog for the Game Gear. This was released in 1991 for the Sega Game Gear, as well as the Sega Master System. Not to be confused with, of course, the classic Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Genesis, which came out earlier that same year. So, Aaron, I was hoping you could tell our listeners why you selected this game to be our first side mission on this program.
Well, Sonic the Hedgehog is a classic character. He is one of the quintessential characters. He has never had the level of... He's always struggled to have the level of quality that Mario games has, the level of acclaim that Mario has. Sometimes he's treated as a bit of a joke, a relic of the 90s. It's been said over and over again, it's been done to death, but he's struggled since he switched to 3D. Some people said he should never leave the 2D realm. And I felt that Sonic the Hedgehog is a game series that I love dearly, but the Genesis games have been done to death. Everybody's played those games. Everybody's analyzed those games and dissected those games. And I felt like a more obscure title, one that people had not played nearly as much, one that I had not played nearly as much, as a Sonic fanboy had not played nearly as much, deserves some attention. And my thoughts immediately went to the Game Gear, because the Game Gear came out and it was like it captured my little mind's attention as a young boy, because it was a handheld game system that was in color and it had the characters you love, and I never had one. And I felt that this game, which came out at the same time as the much acclaimed Sonic the Hedgehog, deserved some attention and a little bit of a closer look to see, should people revisit this game? People know that Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic 2, Sonic 3 and Knuckles all are great games, but what about the lesser-known 8-bit versions of this? So that's why I felt like it was important to take a look at it. It deserved our attention, our in-depth analysis of every single level of this game to see just what's up.
Well, we will be fulfilling our role as video game archaeologists and digging into this lesser-known title. I never played this when I was a kid. Jared, did you ever play this game when you were a wee boy?
Not that I remember. I had one or two friends with Game Gears, but it was more like kind of just a novelty, just to see a handheld system in color. I am the proud owner of a Sega Nomad, which does not fit in a fanny pack, I will say.
Yeah, that thing's pretty bulky.
It's it stuffs all the guts of a Genesis into a handheld, in quotes, system.
It's another example of Sega's amazing business decisions.
You single-handedly are keeping Energizer afloat in this day and age.
One of the first things I did after I got it, well, no, once I realized how many batteries I was eating up, I went to Radio Shack and got like a generic AC converter, so I could just plug it in.
Smart thinking.
Yes.
Aaron, you mentioned envy for people that had a Game Gear. Did you ever manage to play this game when you were a child?
I actually never did manage to play this one. I never played Sonic the Hedgehog. At the Venture near my house, Venture, for those of you who don't know, is like a Target. It's a lesser Target from the 90s. At the Venture department store near my house, they had demos set up where, they had a Game Gear that was attached to attached to a shelf, basically. And it had Sonic 2 for the Game Gear in there. And I played that some. And I was always sort of dismayed and disappointed because Sonic 2 for the Game Gear did not have Tails. It had Tails in all the artwork, but you were looking for Tails. You were trying to find Tails. So you're still playing Sonic by yourself. So it was always sort of disappointing. And the gameplay always sort of sucked in my young mind. Which sort of fed into this. Like, I wanted to revisit and be like, did it suck? Was it bad, or was I just bad? Was I expecting something more because I had played the Sonic games for the Genesis? Was I expecting something? Were my expectations too high?
I definitely remember playing Sonic 2 8-bit for the Game Gear, and also thinking it was pretty hard. Not bad necessarily, but pretty difficult. I remember playing like a friend or a relative's Game Gear and checking that out a little bit. But I never played this first one until it's been re-released a number of times. So listeners, if you'd like to play along, there's a number of legitimate ways to do so. It's available on the Nintendo 3DS eShop. It's also available if you happen to have a copy of the GameCube release of Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut. It's an unlockable on that. And it's also available if you have a PlayStation 2. It's on the Sonic Mega Collection Plus for PlayStation 2. And I believe it's available in various collections on Steam as well. However, if you would like to play the Master System version, that's a little trickier. I think that there might be collections out there available where you can play it on a computer, possibly. It used to be available on the Wii Virtual Console, but sadly, the Wii Virtual Console is no more. So that one's a little trickier to track down. Fellas, before we get into our discussion of the first stage of this game, how would you like to hear the official plot of this game taken from the official instruction manual?
Yes, please.
I would love it. Please. I'm really curious now.
All right. From page 3 of the instruction manual, here's the plot titled Crush Dr. Robotnik. Dr. Ivo Robotnik, the mad scientist, is snatching innocent animals and turning them into evil robots. Only one tough dude can put an end to the demented scientist's fiendish scheme. It's Sonic, the real cool hedgehog, with the spiked haircut and power sneakers that give him super speed. Help Sonic fight hordes of metal maniacs with the help of the supersonic spin attack. Speed down rolling hills and leap over dangerous booby traps, then splash through the chilling waters in an underground cavern. And if you're lucky, you can warp to the special stage where you jump from springs and bounce off bumpers as if you're in a real pinball machine. Your greatest challenge lurks in a flying blimp where you come face to face with Dr. Robotnik himself. Spin till you're dizzy, save the animals, and become the superhero. Be Sonic. Be atomic.
What? I was on board till that last line. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Sonic's like Gogeta. He's a product of, he's a metaphor for the nuclear age.
Oh, that explains it.
Thank you, by the way, for lending that a sense of gravitas with your reading. That was really good.
It was great. I loved it. It did raise some questions for me, though.
Such as?
Such as, that implies that Sonic's speed comes from his shoes, not from him.
Oh, yeah. They mention like the power sneakers, don't they?
Yeah. They don't say anything about it just says he has them. It doesn't say that it's a power up you get because you have the hyper boots in the game.
I took it as referring to the power up when I read it.
Yeah, that's maybe, but it definitely implies that it could be interpreted as it just coming from his shoes in general.
Yeah, there's definitely a little room for interpretation here. And honestly, this doesn't give us a whole lot about like the setting or like the plot or who Dr. Robotnik is and what his motivations are. It's pretty thin, all things considered.
Yeah. And another question it raises for me: you play this game, you defeat an enemy, the enemy's gone. You don't see a little animal fall out or fly away like you do in the Genesis versions. But
that's true.
And I noticed that when I was playing it, and I thought, oh, well, maybe in this version, Dr. Robotnik just makes robots and he's just capturing animals for some other reason because, you still release animals at the end of the level. But it implies that in this version of the game, you're just killing these poor little animals that are in the robots.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
I'm a little upset by it because if those are actually little robots that have been turned into animals, what are we doing?
This is truly the darkest timeline.
It really is.
Hey, once they were robots, they weren't worthy of life anymore. At least according to Sonic.
Anymore.
All right. Well, that kind of sets the tone for this game. We may revisit the official instruction manual at a later date because there's other interesting tidbits there. But why don't we move into a recap of the first stage of the game? This would be Green Hill Zone Act 1. Jared, what did you give us some opening remarks on Green Hill Zone Act 1?
Yeah. So, my barometer for Sonic games is Sonic 2. That's my favorite.
Yep.
Sorry, the Genesis 16-bit Sonic 2.
Thank you for specifying.
Excellent game. Truly excellent.
So this felt slow compared to that, just in terms of like getting your momentum up. You obviously don't have the spin dash, which is true of every version of Sonic 1.
Yeah.
Not true anymore.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
there've been re-releases that put it in.
Oh, interesting. I feel like that would change it a lot.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it a lot easier in certain places.
Yeah, I could see that. But the roll is still really useful just to keep your momentum up while still being able to hit enemies. And the music is still great, even though it's like a stripped down version of the track from the Genesis version of the game.
Yeah,
agreed. I would say the same. I made a note of that. I was like, this, it doesn't. It's very bare bones. It's very it's a very simplified version of it, but it's decently adapted.
So the original music from the original game is by, I think, Masato Nakamura. And in this game, the music is by Yuzo Koshiro, who also basically directed this game. But he did the remix of Green Hill Zone as well as writing a bunch of original music.
Oh, interesting. So that the music doesn't get reused throughout the game. It's just, I guess, setting the tone in the first act or two.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he I think reuses a couple compositions, but mostly chooses to use his own music.
Cool.
Let's see here. Let's get into some of the details of this game. I wanted to mention before we do that, there's a map in this game. There's a map screen.
I noticed that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know me. I love a good map screen.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very appropriate to as to make this game sort of a companion piece to Donkey Kong Country, because we have heaped praise upon Donkey Kong Country for having an overworld map and then maps for each individual world, but Sonic the Hedgehog for the Game Gear beat him to it.
That's right, baby. Coming hard with the map screen.
Yeah, and it's not to get ahead of ourselves. I played a little bit more than just the first world myself. We're talking about the first stage of the first world, but I played a little bit more than that, and it follows along pretty well.
It does. We even though, like we were saying, the instruction manual is kind of thin on plot, the map screen definitely suggests a lot narratively as to like where we're at and kind of like what the setting is. We're on an island in the middle of some kind of unspecified ocean. We've got a green area and then like a watery area, some cliffs going up, and then some kind of mechanical fortress with dark clouds billowing at the top.
Yeah, up top there. That's the goal, isn't it?
So let's see. There are a lot of things introduced in this stage. There are slopes, there's springs, there's TVs with power ups. We're practicing our supersonic spin attack, which, as Jared mentioned, you can't spin dash. It's just you can jump and you spin while you're jumping, and if you're running and press down, you roll into the ball and keep going that way. Gain a little speed that way. We've also got some enemies who are showing up for the first time here. We've got the Moto Bugs, which are oddly much smaller than their Genesis counterpart. They're just tiny little cute little Moto Bugs. And we've also got Crab Meet the Crab and the Buzz Bombers, the always annoying Buzz Bombers.
Yeah. I noticed that about the Moto Bugs because it's much smaller, but it made me think about sort of this game's not really counterpart, but kind of like Super Mario Land for the Game Boy. Like the Goombas are much smaller. Everything's very shrunk down in that game, and it made me think of that.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Yeah. There's not a lot of secrets to speak of in this stage, although there is one hidden TV. Did any of you all find the hidden power-up TV?
The Extra Life one?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I found the Extra Life in this level. I found the Invincible and the Hyper Boots, but I did not find the Extra Life.
Yeah. The Extra Life is hidden in a tree, kind of like in the Genesis version. There's a bunch of things hidden in trees. There's one in this stage hidden in a tree.
I jumped at some trees, but I was like, there's so many trees. I wasn't going to bother with all of them.
Like you mentioned, there's invincibility. There's also the shoes. I believe they call them the power sneakers in the instruction manual for this game. But nevertheless, they're kind of out in the open on your path there, just to kind of introduce you to them. There's no diverging paths in this stage. If you look at the map, it's pretty simple. It's just one kind of flat plane that you just go through. It's pretty straightforward, kind of an intro, almost tutorial stage.
Yeah, as it should be.
There was a power-up that looked like, I'm not sure what it was, actually. It looked like it had a down arrow on it.
That was a checkpoint.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. It confused me at first, too, because like I hit it and nothing happened, and then I beat the level. And then it was only like in subsequent levels and or playthroughs that I realized, once I died, I was like, oh, it put me back here where that thing was.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention that I did not realize that those were supposed to be TV screens. I thought they were like boxes or something.
Yeah, that's what we always called them too. We just called them boxes.
Yeah. Well, this is another little tidbit from the instruction manual where they are referred to as TVs. But I, like you, Jared, thought that they were just boxes as a kid. And we were just kind of seeing the outside of it. But I guess they're TV screens, and somehow they digitally transmit their contents to Sonic when he destroys them with his body.
Yeah, I think I liked it better when they were just like non-specific power-up boxes. I think that makes more sense.
It's silly to call them TV screens. Like, I sort of get it. Like, when you look at it, like, sure, okay, that could be a TV screen, but there's nothing to really indicate that it's a TV. Like, there are no knobs, there's no antenna, there's no nothing. I think that we were the reasonable ones. I think Sega's ridiculous.
I wonder if that's like official canon anywhere else but in the manual for this game, or if it's like a widespread thing.
What higher canon could there be than the official manual for Sonic the Hedgehog 8-bit?
All the fan fiction that I read insists that it's the way it is.
We're going to get into this, I'm sure, but there's a lot of really stupid lore for the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise.
Oh my God.
and conflicting lore as well. I mean, you got novelizations, you got comics, you got animes, you got feature films now, you got, and all of that tends to contradict each other.
it really makes you appreciate Nintendo and their protection of their characters, even though Mario doesn't have any continuity either. Like they still have like in this day and age, they have some like quality assurance.
Oh yeah,
know?
Oh yeah.
Sonic for decades has not.
Sonic will do anything.
Yeah, hopefully now they feel a little more protective now that he's like a successful film. Like hopefully they'll take it a little more seriously, having some sort of established lore, but probably not. They just don't care.
Well, yeah, it's definitely true that Sonic has fallen on hard times these days. But back in this era, he was a young buck. He had just popped right out of the computers and onto our TV screens. We were getting to know him for the first time. Yeah.
And if this was your first exposure, if this was your first exposure to Sonic the Hedgehog, how do you think you guys would feel about it?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. We like if I was going to rank this level, as a first stage as compared to like Super Mario Brothers 1-1 or Donkey Kong Country, Jungle Hijinks, those are much better introductory levels, I would say. They're more sophisticated. They teach you how to play the game, but there's also secrets to uncover if you have like a higher skill level. So they're more rewarding to replay. There's alternate paths. This stage is pretty straightforward. Now, maybe it's not fair to compare it to those two levels because this is like on a handheld console, although I suppose the Master System version was 8-bit, just like Super Mario Brothers. So maybe it is a fair comparison after all.
I was going to say a fair comparison would be to Mario Brothers 1-1, Super Mario Brothers 1-1.
Yeah. I guess we could also compare it to the first stage of Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Genesis. And in that case, I mean, there's no comparison. That level is just iconic.
Yeah. And it's a much better level. It's a much better level and it's on every level, it's a better level.
So, in terms of like if we were to think about it in a vacuum and not compare it to any of those much better stages, much more iconic stages, I'd say it's not bad. And that goes a long way. It could be bad and like frustrating to play or annoying or awful. And it's not that. It's just kind of simple. There's one exciting part. You can go down a hill really fast and get some air off of the kind of jump at the end of it and basically skip the whole entire stage, which is kind of cool. And there's like one secret, that hidden 1-up we mentioned. That's about it. So I don't know. If I was going to give this stage a rating, I'd maybe 2.5 out of 5.
All right. I'd say that's fair. What about you, Jared?
I think it's a little better than that, actually. I mean, it's definitely an intro. I actually played through it a couple of times, and like the first time I just tried to get it done as quickly as possible, as you do in Sonic games.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to basically like do that thing that you can do in Sonic the Hedgehog where you go so fast that you like go past the edge of the screen and you can't see Sonic anymore. Which is always pretty cool. And then when I took it a little slower, I don't know. I liked that I could do it both ways and it still works as a game.
Yeah, in general, this game seems to emphasize more like slower, like exploration-based platforming, more so than like its Genesis counterpart.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of a necessity because you got the Game Gear and the screen is much smaller in general. Which there's something I noticed, and I don't know if you guys noticed this, but whichever way Sonic is directing, to the right or the left, the screen will shift a little further in that way.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah, which I thought was a really nice touch and really clever. Which
is not the case on the Master System version. The two versions of the game are basically identical in most ways, but of course we got screen crunch on the Game Gear, so they've taken steps to alleviate that.
Yeah. And another thing they did, the Game Gear version did not have, I don't know if you noticed while playing, occasionally there'd be little yellow signs with exclamation points on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were not there in the Master System version. They're there for the Game Gear version because the Game Gear version, had a smaller screen and therefore you had less chance of any sort of warning when there was something like a pit of spikes coming up. So they put those there so that the spikes would stay there, and still be an obstacle and still be somewhat of a surprise. But you'd have a little more warning that was coming up.
That's interesting.
I thought so too. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, did either of you manage to access the special stage at the end of this level?
Yeah, I did on the run through where I just tried to take it slow and collect everything. It's fine. It's a little less bonkers than the special stage in the Genesis version of Sonic 1.
Oh God, I'm having bad flashbacks just thinking about it.
But it's nowhere near the absolute perfection of the special stages in Sonic 2. I mean, those are just so much fun.
Yeah, the pinnacle, unstoppable.
I mean, not to get in a tangent here, but Sonic 2 special stages I really like, but they are so hard.
They are really hard.
Like they're like prohibitively hard. Like I don't think I've ever beaten them by myself. I always needed a second player to get all the rings.
I think they're a challenge, but I don't think they're that bad. I mean, you have to practice at them certainly, but I don't think they're harder than most Sonic game special stages, I guess.
They certainly are.
Definitely
I don't want to start a huge fight here, but they absolutely are. Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles special stages, I breeze through. No problem. Sonic 2, though, even though that was the first Sonic game I ever played, probably the Sonic game I've played the most, I still have trouble with the special stages, and I'd struggle really hard to beat them without a second player.
Well, I know that you have played Sonic 3 and Knuckles more than just about any other game. So I know that you can crush those stages, and I've watched you do it. I have a lot more difficulty with them. So I'm going to go ahead and differ with you on this one.
Interesting. Well, then, we shall fight. Let's fight.
So the special stage at the end of this level is basically just a chance to get one-ups and continues. There's nothing in terms of collectibles or completion here. Chaos Emeralds are not found in special stages in this game. They're found in a different way, which we will discover in the next episode. But in this episode, there's no Chaos Emeralds. The special stage, if you get 50 rings and complete the stage, much like the first Sonic for the Genesis, that's how you get the special stage, although there's no giant ring to jump through in this case. You just hit the sign at the end, and if you have 50 rings, you can visit the special stage. However, if you manage to get 100 rings in a stage, which is kind of hard to do, but if you do it, you get a 1-up, but your ring counter rolls back over to 1. So if that were to occur, you wouldn't have enough rings to get to the special stage.
Yeah. That's weird. That's weird.
That is weird.
Like that.
Yeah. It seems like a programming quirk, but they mention it in the instruction manual, watch out for this. So it might have been a programming quirk, but they just decided not to change it.
Just trying to make it a weird trade-off.
Or it was too difficult to fix or something, so they just didn't bother.
It's a feature.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we bring our level recap discussion to a close?
Before we do that, if I might, a couple things I noticed that were kind of interesting to me. If I might.
Please.
When you pause things, the animations in the background keep going.
That's true.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was like, wait, didn't I pause it? I was like, oh yeah, I did pause it. All the flowers are still moving around though, and the water's still going in the background. That was kind of a nice touch. I kind of like that.
Yeah, the flowers keep dancing, the water keeps rushing.
Yeah, it was cool. I don't know if you guys let this happen, but Sonic has an idle animation, which I appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he does
nice
this little
touch.
Toe tapping. Just
I'm waiting.
Oh God.
That was, of course, a loving tribute to Jaleel White.
R.I.P.
I don't think he's.
I'm just kidding.
Honestly, just all in all, I just want to say that this game controls better than I expected it to.
Yeah, it's pretty smooth, pretty tight.
Yeah, I had very low expectations going in, much like I did with the movie that just came out, and therefore I think that I appreciated the level that it had much more so. Again, just like the movie that just came out, I thought that it controlled pretty well. Occasionally there were things that I was like, well, that's BS, but on the whole, I was pretty pleased with things.
I would agree with that. Yeah, the controls really, there's nothing to complain about here. It's pretty tight. You know, it's a well programmed game. There's nothing too janky going on here. Even the screen crunch doesn't really bother you too much because of kind of the simplicity of the level design. But yeah, it feels nice to play.
Yeah. And so like I was expecting to have a miserable time, and on the whole, I enjoyed it. Which was cool.
It was cool.
Super cool.
Jared,
you guys got any chili dogs?
Oh no, it's Jaleel White. He's back in the podcast studio.
Did I do that, Tails?
We can't get rid of him.
Man.
All right. Jared, do you have any final thoughts on Act 1 of Green Hill Zone?
I missed being able to bump the sign at the end of the level.
Oh,
and
yeah.
like push it up in the air for bonus points. I was like that. I was trying to do it a couple times, but it doesn't work. So
yeah, that's interesting because in this version the sign does go up in the air, unlike in the Genesis version, I think. Mm-hmm. But in Sonic 3, of course, on the Genesis, the sign would go up in the air and then you could bump it. So yeah, I know. I tried to bump it too, but alas, I could not.
Yeah, and then you get in the Sonic 3 version, Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, you can get those extra TV screens.
Yeah.
For some reason that feels so 90s. I'm not sure why. Like having a TV screen for a power up.
Right. Yeah. A TV screen was just so cool in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Like Toe Jam and Earl boom boxes or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Like specifically a CRT TV.
Yeah. Big old tube.
All right. Well, I suppose we'll wrap it up there, gentlemen. That was Act 1 of Green Hill Zone, the first stage of 8-bit Sonic the Hedgehog. But we're not done. There are 6 zones in this game, and each of them have 3 acts. So we've got quite a few stages to cover. On the next episode of this series, which will be coming out about a week after you listen to this one, we'll be covering Act 2 of Green Hill Zone for this game, for Sonic the Hedgehog, for the Master System and the Sega Game Gear.
Cannot wait. Just like every single Sonic fan, there can never be enough Green Hill Zone.
That's so true. So true.
Green Hill Zone all the way down.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there then, gentlemen. Jared, thanks again for joining us.
Anytime. It's been fun.
It's been a pleasure having you. And Aaron,
Indeed.
Thank you as always for being my co-host.
Oh, thank you for being my co-host, sir. I love you.
Aaron, why don't you tell the people where they can find us on the internet?
You guys can find us on onestageatatime.com. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We are everywhere. We're on all your favorite podcasting platforms, including the one you're listening to right now. So please like and subscribe and share with your friends.
All right. And Jared, will you do us the kind honor of giving us our sign off?
Sure thing. Save and continue.
All right.